Welcome to Techstination. Joining us is Marley McAliley, a Google search trends expert. Thanks for joining us, Marley.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, Google is out with its annual Year in Search list. Give us a little overview to begin with before we dive in a little.
Definitely. So I'm sure we can all agree that this year has been unlike any other. So it's really interesting to take a look back at some of the searches that were trending on Google. So perhaps unsurprisingly, many of the top trending searches this year were news-driven, with the election and the coronavirus pandemic coming in at number 1 and number 2 overall top trending searches.
What are some of the other things that made the top lists here before we get into some specific categories?
Some other things that made the top list naturally were also related to the coronavirus pandemic, which was very interesting to see. So we had to make our own category this year, unique to 2020, called ... during coronavirus. So coming in number 1 for that was best stocks to buy during coronavirus. Number 2 was dating during coronavirus. And number 3 was dentist open during coronavirus. So you can see there are a variety of topics that people are considering as we made it through the pandemic.
And I guess the lists are going to vary depending on the country that you're looking at, or if you're looking at the global list.
That is true. So right now, the list I'm sharing with you is U.S.-specific data, but you can go to google.com/2020 if you would like to take a look at the data for other countries and at a global level as well.
So let's talk about some of the categories that were of interest. I mean, this was a year when, for the most part, Hollywood and filmmaking shut down to a great extent, anyway. But there was still new content coming out, and I guess that drove some content in the entertainment or acting categories.
Yes, definitely. So there was top trending TV shows and movies. I think it's interesting to remember that there was a time in 2020 prior to COVID, and we actually had the Oscars. So the number 1 trending movie was Parasite, which broke records at this year's Oscars as the first South Korean film to receive Academy Award recognition. We also had top trending TV show as Tiger King, which was good to see that other people were also taking part in the binging tradition as well during quarantine. And we also had some other shows that are more recently popular, like Cobra Kai, Ozark, and The Umbrella Academy.
When it came to just people overall, the most searched people in the U.S.
Yeah, so the number 1 searched person was Joe Biden, and then actually Kim Jong-un, but Joe Biden also made it to the top list in terms of politicians. And the second most trending politician was Kamala Harris.
And when it comes to some of the fun searches, you have beauty how-tos listed here, and some of those obviously related to the coronavirus too.
Exactly. People were getting very creative this year as they were staying at home and trying to keep up with their beauty and self-care. So we saw how to cut men's hair at home as the number 1 trending search for beauty how-tos. And then second was actually how to plop hair, which I had to Google search myself. And it relates to hairstyling techniques for curly hair that can be done at home.
There was also a how to make category that you have a list for?
Yes, there was how to make, which also was very related to the coronavirus pandemic. We saw number 1 being how to make hand sanitizer. Since there were many shortages for hand sanitizer at the onset of the pandemic, we saw people looking for alternative ways to make it on their own at home. We also saw number 2 top trending as how to make a face mask with fabric. And number 3 was how to make whipped coffee. So people were concerned with staying healthy and safe, but also having some fun during their time at home and getting creative with recipes.
And when it came to recipes, no surprises, sourdough bread was number 1.
It was indeed sourdough bread. So as we saw, a lot of people were partaking in the bread baking craze. So not much surprise, we saw sourdough bread coming in as the number 1 top trending recipe.
Very interesting stuff. And then when it came to music and musicians, who were the leaders there?
So this one was actually a little surprising to me because, again, it was interesting to think about that we did have, mass large-scale events that happened live at the beginning of 2020. So there was the Super Bowl. which influenced the top trending musician, was also in the top trending searches overall, and that was Shakira, who was one of the Super Bowl headliners.
Really interesting. So for more information on the lists, where can people go?
People can go to google.com/2020, where they can see more info on the different categories and also look country to country and see data on a global level as well.
Marley McAliley, thank you for taking the time with us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Now this. It takes a lot of listening to build a better radio, and that's just what the folks at C. Crane have done. Bob Crane and his crew, nestled among the rivers and tallest trees in the world in Fortuna, California, have made a habit of listening to their customers. And that's just what they've done in building the CC Skywave SSB, the Swiss Army knife of portable radios. For everyday listening to AM or FM in the yard or patio or on the nightstand without having to drain a mobile phone battery, it's a great companion. But it is also a companion equipped for NOAA weather information and alerts that can be life-saving. You can listen to FEMA and Coast Guard transmissions too. Beyond all of that, you can tune into shortwave signals from around the world. It's compact, easy to take with you, and built to last. The CC Skywave SSB. Click on the link at Techstination.com.